Hello and welcome to Antigua and Barbuda Intellectual Property and Commerce Office's video series entitled Conversations on Intellectual Property. The Intellectual Property and Commerce Office is commonly known as a BIPCO, or the Intellectual Property and Commerce Registry, and it is located in St. John City on St. John Street in the Gem of the Caribbean. My name is Kyle Kentish, and I am the Deputy Registrar at the Intellectual Property and Companies Registry. For this conversation, I'll be speaking with Mr. Colin John Jenkins, an architect and director at the building development firm CJC and Associates, Incorporated. Good day, Mr. Colin John Jenkins.
Good day, how are you doing?
I'm well, thanks. And yourself?
Not bad at all. That's quite a mouthful.
Yes, indeed. Please introduce yourself and tell us about your background.
All right. My name is Colin John Jenkins, as you mentioned. One of the founders and directors of CJC plus Associates Incorporated.
My apologies.
That's fine. It's a grassroots-inspired partnership that is not something you hear of every day within these parts of the Caribbean, but it entails myself, my brother, his wife, and my wife.
Okay. A family business, so to speak.
Family business in true fashion.
Yes, good. So how did you get involved in this area of work?
Well, it started from my career path in architecture. I spent 6 years in Cuba studying architecture, but prior to that, I always had a sort of liking for understanding how spaces work. And I was curious about science. Then I realized that maybe being a scientist would not necessarily be something that is profitable around these parts.
Fair enough.
So I pivoted to my next love, which was architecture. And then thereafter, leaving university, I unlikely ended up on a construction site. And I spent about 15 years there. And while on the construction site, I saw the opportunity to understand what works and what does not work. So during that time, we started to look at other aspects to make the whole process complete, which is project management and, of course, having an idea of the sustainability in design process, which is something else that I fell in love with. So during that time, we strengthened that aspect of our company, merging with my other directors in terms of their areas of specialty, which is different than mine.
Okay.
So we combined all of our efforts and had this entire development company that then would offer a suite of packages for clients and anybody who wishes to take up consultancy with us.
Right, and hence CJC plus Associates Incorporated.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Mr. Jenkins, this year, on the 26th of April, we observe World Intellectual Property Day 2024 under the theme Intellectual Property and Sustainable Development Goals, Building a Common Future. It's going to give us an opportunity to explore how intellectual property encourages and can amplify the innovative and creative solutions that are so crucial to building our common future. Has intellectual property benefited the work that you do?
So when you think about intellectual property, it's that vehicle, that conduit in which persons' ideas, the innovations are protected. And if your innovations and your ideas are protected, then it fosters the encouragement for you to take the next step in fulfilling these dreams and aspirations and improve on these technologies that you would come up with. So as a designer, whenever I embark on projects where there are sustainable development principles or wellness principles behind of them, I have that assurance because of intellectual property that my ideas will be protected, and then I will be rewarded justly if it comes down to that, because we do know that apart from money, ideas and concepts is another form of currency.
Of course.
Definitely.
Of course. Goodwill, reputation, and so on. Yes. And so the United Nations, as in a sense you've alluded, has identified 17 sustainable development goals. In short, they are no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and partnerships for the goals. What does sustainable development mean to you?
Well, when you think about all those things you just read, that sounds like you're giving a bio or description of our company.
Well, there you go.
Right.
So your company then we can say is the embodiment.
Right. So
and
that's why I like to coin our company as a sustainable building development company or consultancy.
Right.
One of the reasons being we have project managers, quantity surveyors, interior designers, architects, specialists in lead and wellness consultancy, which focuses heavily on not only green buildings themselves as we traditionally know them, but as well as what goes into the spaces inside buildings that are used by occupants so that they can have health and wellness dimensions added to them.
Okay.
So sustainable development goals is right up the alley of what the company does on a day-to-day, and it sort of validates the ideas and our ethos as a company in how we function and provide services to our clients.
Right.
You read it out. Building development, water efficiency,
Yes.
such as communities, partnerships, everything that you mentioned there, you can find some aspect of it in what we do as a daily operation.
Understood. So leading on, and you've somewhat touched on this before, but if you can maybe expound a bit or just give a brief excerpt on how you believe intellectual property can support the achievement of sustainable development goals.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned, you have innovation and technology at the core of the Sustainable Development Goals. In order to resolve these issues which essentially created the Sustainable Development Goal as sort of a charter to resolving our problems, you need innovation, you need technology, you need partnerships, you need protections, you need, for example, funding and agency. The IP allows all of these to happen because you are given protection, you're given an avenue, you're given a platform in which companies, partnerships that are delivering these solutions are protected, are supported, are marketed in their efforts accordingly. So without IP and without intellectual property, you may not have the encouragement to foster persons or consultants or companies to be dedicated to solve some of these crucial problems that the world is facing right now. And that has heavily to do with the protection of data and ideas, which is absolutely fundamental to what we do.
Of course. And maybe I can add, and I'll ask your agreement or otherwise. In this age of information and misinformation, trust and mistrust, whether you would think that intellectual property can help persons who you may wish to partner with, investors and so on, other persons in your field, to have trust and confidence in your product, in your logo, in your image, as a result of having utilized intellectual property rights such as trademarks, copyrights, and patents, as you said. Would you think that that would also be the case?
That is also the case. When you think about intellectual property as a vehicle, there also is, in a sense, a data storage or a source or point of validation for companies.
Yes.
So, for instance, the intellectual property would have databases of companies that they would have verified the information coming from the companies to know that they are legitimate.
Yes.
You mentioned disinformation.
Yes.
We have a lot of issues where persons have been taken advantage of because this company purports themselves to be, for example, a consultant, but they did not verify that that is a consultant. So the intellectual property allows persons to know that they can trust sources in which they're dealing with. So it acts as a verification process for companies in an age where we have so many issues online in trust. And trust itself is an incredible commodity for businesses to function in a society like ours.
Of course, of course. So it would help to foster better partnerships.
Yes,
I think we can
because it validates the companies and the players involved. It
Yes.
validates the information coming from consultants and companies and governments alike. When you look at the fact that someone can literally stay at home and create an app or a coding language to solve a problem, that person needs to be protected. And if that person is protected, the likelihood is that whatever comes out of it, it generates a spin-off for that community, for that country, irrespective of how small those countries are.
Right.
So when you think about the small island developing states like ours, and we have solutions to problems coming out of things such as innovation parks and forums and the like, and that person locally can have a pattern or copyright to their idea, to their work, and that person becomes successful, the company benefits, the country benefits. And without that protection, that person could be taken advantage of from other players in other parts of the world.
Understood. So going back to our theme, building a common future. If we view our common future as a shared road ahead, then how do you envision your field of work helping to build that road?
Well, you just mentioned the word, helping to build that road.
Right.
That's exactly what we do. We're a sustainable development company. And at the core of what we do has to do with thought process, careful thought process that goes into anything that we do. Okay. When you think about spaces that human beings occupy, whether it's healthcare, schools, churches, banks, play parks, and the like, they are critical in order for us to be productive, right? And so at the hallmark of that is using the Sustainable Development Goals as some of the things that we factor into our designs and how we deal with our clients, but as well understanding that the protections that are offered by intellectual property and other organizations of that like give us the sort of impetus and security and self-assurance that we need, that we would be protected, we would be looked after, that we would be appreciated in terms of what we do, how we offer services, yes, and that we are legitimate with business and the like.
What kind of advice would you give to young people in particular, but the community at large, or to anyone for that matter, trying to effect change?
That's a very important and deep question, and I'll answer it by giving a synopsis of my experience. When I got to Cuba to study, I noticed in all of the major towns and cities, there's a Central Park. And that Central Park was a place that came alive in the evenings, especially on the weekends. Okay. And there were persons from children to grandparents to ordinary persons traversing those parks. When you look around in terms of the Caribbean, we don't have that. A lot of our city centers are very dense, and we don't tend to have at the hallmark these parks at the center, right? They have different forms of advantages to have them like this. We are not at the stage now where we can implement some of these things because it's far gone.
Yes.
But what I would encourage is going forward in the future, and this goes out to everybody actually, that whenever you think about development, think about the whole picture. You may be thinking about the economics behind development, but the idea of the Sustainable Development Goals, the idea behind the sustainability itself is the three pillars, not just the economics, but the environment and the society. Depending on how you create spaces, you influence behavior. So if those spaces are not as such that you provide the best environment that fosters creativity, community, goodwill, innovation, you are creating a societal problem in hindsight. And so development as such has to think about these three factors. It's a long process. We could have a conversation for an entire afternoon. I know I don't have an entire afternoon, so I'm summarizing it for you in a simplistic fashion.
Yes.
But too often we don't think about that. We think about maximizing space for economic reasons only. It is wrong. Because when you have persons, for instance, that spend 90% of their time indoors, and those indoor spaces are not conducive to good health and well-being. You have higher rates of issues with non-communicable diseases. You also have behavioral issues, not just with our workers, but even with children. So spaces are a big deal. How we foster development is a big deal. How we project development and long-term development plans is a big deal. And we need to start thinking not just with economics, but with the Sustainable Development Goals at the core, and with understanding that our development affects how our people will be successful. It goes down from where our roads are traversed in terms of the sizes of our roads, the maintenance of our roads, our buildings, whether they foster care in community, civic pride. That whole language of development is a philosophy. It's not just putting pen to paper, putting brick and mortar. There is a philosophy and a vision behind designing and development of community spaces. And I really urge people to consider that as part of the discussion going forward.
Good, good. Thank you very much. And in a sense, finally, how can we learn more about what you're doing? Your company, yourself as a project manager, yourself as a sustainable development consultant?
Well, you don't need to look very far.
Okay, that's good.
You simply have to Google my name and everything comes up. But be that as it may, I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Ever so often I share articles, I participate in discussions at schools, and as well we have a website.
Okay.
cjc.design, that's it.
Gotcha.
cjc.design, and it comes up. It has sections that deal with publications, and I'm out there.
Good,
Definitely people could understand what I do, because I honestly believe that if you don't put yourself out there, no one would know exactly what you're passionate about and what you're capable of. So I encourage any young person, any entrepreneur to market yourself. I do understand that there are certain social norms and barriers, but market yourself and think about your company not just from an island perspective in the Caribbean or even your home country, but think of yourself as a regional entity and brand, and comport yourself likewise.
Right, regional and international.
Well,
plans.
yes,
Yes, of course.
definitely.
Mr. Colin John Jenkins, very nice speaking with you
Pleasure is
today.
all mine.
Thank you very much.